Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswati Ji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. Bhagwan Krishna gives us the perfect answer. He says, tapas of speech, the right speech, is that which is true and kind and beneficial. It must actually fulfill all three criteria in order to be spoken. So do you hold back? You hold back only if that which you're going to say, while it may be true, is neither kind nor beneficial. You're walking out of the house to go to a party. Person with you is wearing something. She says, "Does this dress make me look fat?" Now, maybe she is fat, and especially maybe she's recently gained a lot of weight. Well, no dress can hide that. Now, what are you going to achieve on the way to an event by saying, "Oh yeah, it makes you look fat"? It's neither kind nor beneficial. But on the other hand, you also can't say, "Oh no, you look like a ravishing, runway model," because she knows it's not true. So you find a way. You find a way to say that which is true in a way that is both kind and beneficial. And there are some things that are just better not spoken. I'll give you a personal experience of this, personal story. When I was my senior year in high school, so I was 17. And I had always been someone in the West, when we are committed, I was not spiritual, but I considered myself deeply ethical and really rooted in values, and truth was one of them. I was a hardcore vegan and, organic and fair trade at that age. And truth for me was really important. Truth at all costs, like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to hold back the truth. I don't want you to do it with me. Truth will conquer everything. So my boyfriend, who was my first love, who at the time I thought we were soulmates, we were going to be together forever. Being in love at 17 is something very precious and sweet. And he was a year older. And so we had been together since my junior year, since I was 15 or 16. My senior year, he went off to college in Northern California, quite far away. So my dad, who's a divorce attorney, and I are having dinner one night. And he says to me, "So what are you and Eric going to do now that he's going off to college?" And I said, "Oh, we're going to have an open relationship." And my dad says, "That sounds very interesting. Tell me about it." Anybody, by the way, who's a parent of a teenager, take lessons from my dad. He gets gold stars all around. So he says, "That sounds very interesting. Why don't you tell me about that?" And I said, "Well, it means that we will date other people because of course we're so far away. But we will be totally honest with each other about it. We'll tell each other everything. And we will stay together forever because we are soulmates. So my dad doesn't say, "What, are you nuts?" He says, "So let me get this straight. You're going to date other people, tell each other about it, and stay together forever." And I said, "Well, yes, of course." And he says, "That sounds very interesting. I look forward to hearing how that works out for you." Now, I share that story because that is the far end, the fallacy end of truth at all costs. There is some truth that is just neither kind nor beneficial. I had not yet learned that. When you have something to say, ask yourself, is it true? Because of course, if it isn't true, then absolutely you shouldn't say it. But is it also kind and beneficial? And that doesn't necessarily, by the way, mean in the moment to the ego of that person. We are not here to ensure that people around us do not have to go through their karmic journey. We're not here to ensure that people around us have their egos padded and all of their agendas fulfilled. But we're certainly here not to harm. And sometimes it becomes difficult because sometimes someone's ego or agenda is so wrapped up in untruth that it's very hard to know what to do. And in those cases, I would say speak the truth. Because even though it may be difficult for them in the moment, ultimately in the long run, in the service of their growing and deepening and unfolding, it actually is kind and beneficial. Doesn't mean they're going to necessarily enjoy it in the moment. But in the bigger picture of truth and dharma, it actually is kind and beneficial. And there are times that saying the truth is very difficult. And yet you know it is the kindest thing. Not necessarily in the moment, but in the bigger picture. But it's really critical to get your own ego out of the way there. Because our own ego loves to say things like, "Well, but it's true. That's why I said it. Sorry if you're hurt, but it was true." Telling someone what you think of them isn't necessarily kind or beneficial in the short run or the long run, unless they can hear it. And this is another important part about honesty. If we know that someone can't hear it, it isn't necessarily honest to speak it. I'll give you another personal example about this. When I first moved to India, I moved here because of God, because I had had an extraordinary spiritual experience of the divine standing on the banks of Ganga. And because when I met Puja Swamiji and came into the presence of a guru, I felt the presence of God. Now, I come from a Reformed Jewish community. We were not religious. We were not spiritual, but not religious. Nobody ever talked about God other than, "Oh my God," or, in other forms of profanity. What I found was when I tried to explain to my parents why I wanted to live in India, and I would talk about God, what they would hear was, she's been brainwashed. She's been kidnapped. She's joined a cult. Something bad has happened to her. And so I'm talking about the most ecstatic spiritual experiences. And what they're hearing is trouble, brainwashing, problem. If you call my highest truth, God, A, and we say every time I speak A, my parents hear C, then speaking A is no longer truth. If I know that when I say A, they hear C, and C is clearly not true, I had not been brainwashed, I had not joined a cult, I had not been kidnapped, I had had a spiritual experience, then for me to speak it is untruth. But what I discovered was there was a B, and B was the children and the women and the schools that we were building and the programs for the women we were doing. And that was also true for me. I was very excited and touched and inspired to serve and to do the work. It wasn't the main reason. I could have done that work in California. But it was also a very deep and true reason. And when I spoke it, my parents could hear it. And so what I realized was that speaking B was actually more honest than speaking A. Because I spoke A, they heard C. I spoke B, they could hear B. And so B had to become my truth in the communication based on what they could hear. So you've got to ask yourself when you're speaking your truth, is somebody actually able to hear that? Because if they're not, and they hear something different, if you say to somebody, they ask you about the dress, do I look fat? And you say, well, you may have gained a few pounds. And what they hear is, you don't love me anymore. I'm ugly. I'm a worthless human being. Then that's not truth. And even though it's true, you better find a different way of communicating that's more in alignment with what they can hear. And that's a really great and also really beautiful challenge that we have, to start looking at layers of truth and how we communicate them.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out, and for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me.
How can I be like Hanuman? Hanumanji is this incredible embodiment of the power of devotion, of this power of surrender. All of these feats he did, these miracles he did, I take God's name and it happens. It happens. And it's not false humility. It's not saying, God just made it happen. It's really, that is his experience. He's just a divine channel through which that power flows. He also is a beautiful embodiment of, we talk in here a lot about sort of the different levels of existence that exist simultaneously. And we may talk about, sometimes people will use words like higher and lower, but I try to avoid that because they're all beautiful levels. And levels of the physical body, this human incarnation, the current intersection of time and space in which we have a body and we have a role and a story. And there's something beautiful in that. It's the space in which our dharma gets unfolded. And then, of course, there's the level of just oneness with God. And Hanumanji says so beautifully when Bhagwan Ram asks him, "Who are you?" In essence, he says, when I forget the truth of who I am, the highest truth of who I am, when I forget that, I am your das, I am your servant, I serve you, I love you. Not that there's anything wrong with that, not when I'm an awful, horrible person, not when I'm a failure spiritually. Because a lot of us, when we are in that experience of being in the body, in the humanity, mired in our humanity, there's a bit of guilt and shame that goes along with it when we're on a spiritual path of, oh my God, I lost it, I forgot. And Hanumanji, it's so beautiful, when I forget who I am, I'm your servant, I'm your das. And that's beautiful. It's an exquisite relationship. So it's not that I forgot myself and therefore I am a spiritual failure. But just in those moments that I consciously, unconsciously, purposely, by accident, forget who I am. Because we spoke a few nights ago about the bhakti tradition and how in the bhakti tradition we consciously, willingly forget that we are one with God so that we can worship God. Because being in love feels so beautiful. So whether it's a conscious forgetting, a purposeful forgetting, or an unconscious, accidental forgetting, either way, when I forget the core truth of who I am your das, your servant, your devotee, I love you. And when I remember who I am, then I am you, one with you. And it's this beautiful teaching of these different levels, neither being wrong or right, but there obviously being a higher eternal truth in our oneness with God than in our physical form. And yet they both exist, and they both exist simultaneously. And as long as we hold it with tenderness and devotion, and we don't get stuck in the meanness of it. Because even in Hanumanji's meanness, like I'm separate from you, I'm still devoted to you. It's not meanness, aren't I so great? Did you see what I did? I should get, a gold star, and I should be appointed the, something major of Ayodhya when you go back, like because of me, it all happened. You better make me, you're second in line. Nothing like that. Even when I forget myself, I am devoted to you. Even when I'm mired in my humanity, I'm devoted to you. And so it shows us how even when we are not remembering that we are one with God, that it's not all hope is lost. It's not we're a failure. We can use that time, again, either purposely or when it happens not on purpose, when we're unable to access that experience of oneness, to use that as a time to just say, all right, how beautiful. This is the time for me to practice my devotion. Not able to feel one with God, okay. This is a season of bhakti then. Season of devotion. And isn't that beautiful? It's also a path. It's its own path to liberation, its own path to moksha. It's not a lower path. It's just a different path. And then when we have those moments, those experiences, those seasons, those remembrances of being one with God, well, then we know I am you. And then the lover and the beloved become one. But we're able to taste that experience of the divine in either and both. So it's sort of something for everyone, path of devotion, not you have to be like this and then. Even if when you're in the time of forgetting who you are, no problem. Be like me, be devoted. And he shows us the way. And there's so many stories, but my other favorite story that I love is the story of him with the pearl necklace. Because a lot of us start to value valuables. And we've been kind of brainwashed to think about the value of something as in how much it would catch on the market. How much did you pay? How much could you sell it for? That becomes the value of something. And of course, acquire a lot of things, accumulate a lot of expensive things, and discover how miserable you still are. And you realize, there actually isn't much value in any of that at all. For anything that I really want. For that which I'm really looking for. All these valuables filling up my shelves, filling up my house, filling up my room. And I still can't sleep. I'm still depressed. So where's the value in the valuables? And Hanumanji gives it in such a beautiful way. After the war, Sita Ma gifts him this beautiful pearl necklace. She says, like a mother to the child, she says, but now be careful, Hanuman. This is a very precious necklace. Take good care of it. It's like when your mom decides you're old enough to have something nice. And she says, now here it is, but don't leave it in the gym at school. Put it away in your locker. Take care of it. Don't lose it. So she says, take care of it. This is very precious. And so Hanumanji takes that necklace and he starts to look at each individual pearl, and he looks at it this way, and then he looks at it this way, and he looks at it this way, and he then puts it in his mouth, and he bites it in half, and again looks, and then spits it out. And then he goes to the next one, and again he examines it from every angle, bites it in half, examines it, spits it out. One by one he's doing this, and finally Sita Ma can't take it anymore, and she says, Hanuman, what are you doing? I just told you this was a very precious necklace. You're biting them in half. You're spitting them out. Don't you know how to take care of valuables? Essentially. And he says, because of course he knows what's really valuable, and he says, Sita Ma, you said this is precious. If it's precious, that means my Ram is here. That means God is in these. So I'm looking for Ram in the pearls. And in the ones where I don't see him, well, I figure those must be the ones that are not so precious. So I'm spitting them out. And I'm waiting to find the one that's really precious that has my Ram in it. And it's such a beautiful reminder that essentially wherever God is, that's heaven. That's value. And it can happen in a super big mansion, and it can happen in a hut. Totally irrelevant. Has nothing to do with what the walls are made of. Lanka was a city made of gold, and essentially it was hell. It was led and headed by and terrorized by Ravan. Dwarka is a city made of gold. Heaven, headed by Bhagavan Krishna. So it wasn't the gold that's the problem or the key. It has to do with who's in charge. So that's the teaching is in our lives. It's not that pearls keep God away. You can have pearls, no problem with that. You can have a city made of gold, no problem. Just make sure it's Dwarka, not Lanka. Just make sure that the head of your city of the self is the divine and not the demon. And so it's not in the things. It's in the presence of God. Wherever God is, if we said for a moment there was no option of Dwarka. Dwarka was of another yuga, gone. Okay, so our option is city made of gold, Lanka, or a hut in the woods with Ram. Where would you rather be? Right? So it's all about where God is. Where we experience, and of course God is everywhere, but where we experience the presence of God. That's heaven. And so it's just such a beautiful message for our lives of don't focus on the external trappings. If they're there, fine. They're not there, fine. Focus on the presence of God. Because wherever that presence of God is, that's where everything is. So it's a little bit of how to be like Hanuman, but I think just singing the Hanuman Chalisa and praying to him for the Shakti of Bhakti, the power of devotion, the power to be devoted. Is such an incredible power. To just learn how to offer yourself Not like, oh my God, this is what I'm stuck with, or this is what I have to do in my tapasya because I want to be enlightened, and so I've got to, be devoted first. But the joy of devotion. I mean, Hanumanji he's not just a macho hero, but he's a joyful being. Shares joy, spreads joy, he's an embodiment of this love of devotion, of being devoted. Like, what else? I mean, he's just waiting. Please give me something to do. Please tell me something, some way I can be of service. Just keep me near you. And so it reignites in us that power of just being devoted. And again, it doesn't matter what form of God, or with form or without form. It doesn't matter what your religion is or how you connect with the divine. Could be devoted to Mother Nature. Could be devoted to the supreme source of energy and spirit in the universe. Doesn't matter. But just recognizing that love is the greatest power we have. And when it's love for God, the power beyond powers. And then everything becomes not only possible, but happening.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for
summer break because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
I am neither a computer engineer nor am I clairvoyant. So I can't give you the where are we going either from the technological side or from the clairvoyant side. What I can tell you is that we know that technology is going to keep increasing and expanding. It's never going to go backwards. The nature of technology is it's going to build on each other. Since the Industrial Revolution began, since the time where we first discovered steam engine for transportation, nothing goes backwards. Now you can follow it. So we go from a horse and buggy, and then we develop a steam engine for a train, and then we develop slowly how to make that work in a car, and then slowly. We're never going to find ourselves back on horse and buggies. Even if our world got so polluted that every single human being was going to die of lung cancer or asthma, there's no country in the world that I could conceive of where they say, I know, let's go back to horses and buggies, and where that was going to work. There might be people who would suggest it, but it's just not going to happen. As long as we have democracies, as long as we have free will, as long as we have people having free choice, you're not going to uninvent motors. Now, technology is starting to get more clean. So instead of running on diesel, then they start to run on petrol, then they start to run on natural gas, then they start to run on electricity. So it gets cleaner and cleaner. I hope we'll someday have, solar operated vehicles. But it's going to get cleaner, but it's not going to go backwards. Similarly with our computer technology, it's just going to keep expanding. You cannot go backwards. Sadly, I would love to uninvent social media. No such luck. The question then becomes, okay, now that these things exist and we cannot uninvent them, how do we turn them into tools we can use? Fire can burn down your house or cook your meals. Depends on how you use it. AI is like that. We can't uninvent it. We can't go backwards. It's here. Now, there may come a time, depending on how it moves, there certainly may come a time in which countries come together in the way that they've done so far, only about nuclear weapons, in which post-World War II, countries came together, the UN was founded, and they started saying, okay, wait, this is too dangerous. We're going to start to have some international rules about what is allowed. But as we've all seen, most countries don't listen to that. Countries are still stockpiling nuclear weapons. Countries who are still selling technology to each other. Countries who aren't supposed to have the technology are building the bombs. So even an entire system like a United Nations that comes together and all of these pacts and acts and treaties internationally about something that literally could obliterate all of creation in a matter of a few moments. Here we are, more than, 75 years later, more, almost 80 years later. It still exists. People are still doing it, working with it, stockpiling it. It's still a threat. So I don't have any hope that we're going to get some kind of international moratorium on that which can be invented, created, done with artificial intelligence. I think it's just going to keep increasing. And I think that the more sanctions you try to put on people, the more things are just going to go into dark web and underground and whatnot. The question for all of us becomes, okay, it's a tool. Now a computer can write an essay for you. As I just today actually was shown how, it's interesting that you ask it, because just today I was shown some of the incredible things that it can do. So, all right, there are things that every one of us sitting here grew up having to do that the next generation is going to grow up not having to do, because AI will be able to do it for them. In the same way that we all had to memorize phone numbers, pick up any teenager off the street, take away their phone, and ask them to recite for you the phone numbers of their 10 closest friends, their parents. I would bet that a huge percentage of them couldn't do it. Why bother? I have my phone. My phone can do it. My phone knows. I just say, call mom. Why do I have to know the number? Okay, it's neither good nor bad. It just is. There will be a lot of things that we did that they won't have to do. Education is going to have to reinvent itself, like it did when calculators were invented. Right? Now you no longer need to know how to do long division. You've got a machine that'll do it. Why bother learning it? I mean, has anyone actually, raise your hand if in the last week or two or year, you've actually pulled out a pen and paper to do a long division problem for some reason other than you're a mathematician or you're taking a math exam or you need to be able to do it without the use of a calculator. I mean, if you want to figure out how many, dollars there are in 6.5 crores of rupees, you're going to pull out a piece of paper and, going to type it in the phone. How many dollars in 6.5 crores of rupees? We have a machine that does it. Education's going to have to reinvent itself. How are we going to teach kids' brains now that we have these machines? It's going to be a fascinating time. I don't know what they're going to decide to allow in school, what they won't. But they'll reinvent themselves. With the help of neurologists, we'll figure out how to engage and stimulate and teach children's brains without making them learn how to do things that they're never going to have to do. Because they've got a machine on their wrist at all times that does it for them. A lot of people are going to be out of jobs, sadly. Countries are going to need to figure out what that means. We're going to have to, together as societies, figure out what does that mean for our workplace. Because I don't think it makes sense, let's look at India for a moment. So if you drive through a lot of India, you see every year in October-ish, November-ish time, it's been less over the last several years when the current central government has had a very, very strong roads and transport ministry. But up until several years ago, you would drive through the streets of India in October, November, and what you would see is people on the side of the road laying down pebbles and leaves and then pouring, made right there in a big tube, like a big steel pipe thing that was open, hot asphalt, and they'd be pouring it on and roads would be diverted and closed because they're making new roads, because in the rainy season every year, the roads that they make, like this, with leaves and pebbles, don't last in the monsoon. So every year these people were making new roads. And every time that I would drive by that, you think, this is an interesting situation. On the one hand, there's great road building technology. It's not rocket science. It exists all over the world. It does not require people to be on the side of the road working with hot melted asphalt and leaves and patting it down and being there while they're literally burning pebbles into asphalt, sucking the fumes on the side of the road. And yet, it keeps people employed every year. There's a huge mass of population who are employed in the remaking of the roads every autumn. Now, is that good or is that bad? It doesn't matter. We're not putting judgment on it. We're just saying there's two ways to look at something. But eventually, technology development catches up. And even in places with huge masses of unskilled labor, it starts to become unacceptable to have roads that fall apart every year and have to be rebuilt every year with leaves and pebbles. And so they start doing it in ways where roads last a decade. And then we have to figure out some other way of employing these people. And I think that's what we are going to be facing as a global community is, okay, here are the jobs that are no longer going to need to be done by people. What can we have these people do? And I see that as actually a great and beautiful opportunity. I mean, I'd love to get them all out planting trees. It's also unskilled labor. It's not like we have to somehow magic wand them into people with MBAs who can run companies. Get them out planting trees. Get them being the ones guarding the trees that have been planted. Making sure that they stay alive. Get them picking up trash from along the banks of water bodies. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can be given as unskilled labor. And I think every layer of the workforce that we look at, there are ways to employ people. It just requires creativity. And I think that's the beautiful opportunity that we now have as societies, is to reinvent what is work that as a society we are prepared to pay for. And that's an exciting time. It's scary. Oh my God. What are we all going to do when a computer can do everything that we do? Huh? Can you plant a tree? Can you take care of it? And lastly, I think what's going to be really exciting is we're starting to look at the whole dharma of technology. It used to be just a thing, like it was a computer, it was a machine. There was no sense of morals or values about it. As long as children weren't able to access pornography or buy drugs or buy guns, it's just a machine. But now we're going to start to actually have to look at values and morals and ethics and dharma of the machine itself, aside from what kids can see or purchase on it. And I think that's going to be an exciting place. As technology becomes more and more a part of our life, to actually have to look at the dharma of technology. I mean, I can see university courses on it. The dharma of technology, or the, ethics of technology. Probably they already exist in some level. And I think that's exciting. I think forcing us to look deeper about everything, including things that we would consider just an object, is a really exciting place to be.
The future of internet radio is here. Om Times Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted. The majority of victims know their attacker. It could be your friend, your neighbor, or someone you met at a party. If you said no, it's rape, and it's a crime. This is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Call the National Sexual Assault Hotline today at 1-800-656-HOPE or visit RAIN.org. That's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
I don't feel like I have any purpose or motivation in life. What's the one thing I should focus on? Focus on being an instrument in God's hands. Focus on bringing as much to others as you can. If you have no personal motivation, let the motivation for your life to be an instrument for others. When you think about God, what are the characteristics of the divine? Compassionate, caring, loving, generous, right? If we all threw out adjectives, if I say, right, describe God in whatever words you can. We're going to talk about grace and love and generosity and caring. Well, if we are channels for the divine here on earth, instruments of God on earth, that's what we are bringing. Love, compassion, caring to others. So just focus on that. And what you'll notice is 2 things. Number 1, it gives meaning to your life. But number 2 is you actually find yourself much happier. It's a great little known secret. Could call it a happiness hack in today's language. That we actually are happier the more we do for others than we are the more we do for ourselves. Actually putting others ahead of us makes us happier. Most of us think, I have to put myself first, because if I don't, nobody else will think of me and then I won't be happy. But what all of the research, the scientific, psychological research bears out is exactly what our sages and rishis and yogis have told us for thousands of years. Serve others, and you will find happiness in yourself. So let that become your North Star. Every day when you wake up, just recommit yourself to being a transmitter of love, of peace, of caring, of service for all. And it's going to appear in all sorts of different ways. Somebody may need something to eat. Somebody might need a shoulder to cry on. Somebody might need a hand held while they walk across the street. Somebody may need something else. Whatever it is. Just let your mantra be yes. How can I help? And just live like that. Give it 3 months. And just see how your life changes. And then in terms of experiencing God without doing any any sadhana. The only way is love. The only way is love. If you can really love any aspect of the divine creation, a person, a tree, an animal, a sunset, it will bring you into love of God. If you can really love the essence of that being. And when you do, you'll experience God.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week. And I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time on Om Times Radio.